Chapter 10 The Long Fingered Thief, a Cabinet of Wonders. Petra spun around and caught a glimpse of a dark blur ducking around a corner not far ahead. Hang on, she told the spider. She sprinted down the street. She was swift and nimble. She would have been pleased by how easily she jumped over obstacles and swung around corners if she hadn't been so worried about losing sight of the boy running ahead of her. He had stolen just about all the krona she had. The gypsy was twisting and turning down the narrow lanes, hoping to lose her. But as his bad luck would have it, he ran down streets that Petra knew from this morning, and she remembered very well how this area was laid out. Suddenly he turned right. Petra gave a satisfied half smile. He had just disappeared down a blind alley. His only way out of the street would be to slip brazenly into one of the shops or homes. Petra sped up to prevent him from doing exactly that. When she turned down the alley, he gave her the look of a hunted animal. She seized him by the arm. Give it back. I ain't got nothing of yours, he shouted. Let me go. He kicked at her, but she gripped him firmly. What's going on here? The belly of an officer turned the corner of the alley, soon followed by the man who owned it. He trundled toward them. Did I hear some shouting? This little gyp stole something from you? He looked with disgust at Petra's prisoner. The squirming boy froze and stared at Petra with an expression of utter fear. It was the first time she saw his face clearly. His dark skin was scarred by the pox. The notch across his left cheek had probably been made by a knife. Beneath brows that looked like they were drawn by two strokes of a thick goose quill drenched in ink, his tawny eyes stared. Petra's first impression was that they were cracked because their yellow color was marked by so many flecks of green. What do they do to thieves in Prague? She asked herself. In Okno, men and women were thrown into the local prison for various periods of time, but children who stole were usually left to the mercy of their parents, and sometimes had to labor for whomever they had wronged. From the boy's expression, however, Petra gathered that the law here didn't send boy thieves out to the orchards to pick fruit for grocers. So she said, Oh, no, sir, we were just playing a game. Is that right? Thought you'd waste an officer's time then, cause a big fuss for nothing, get everyone worked up? I'm very sorry, sir. You're right. We weren't thinking. We were playing catch the pig's tail. She glared at the boy for remaining silent. Why did she have to come up with all the excuses? She kept a good grip on him with her right hand, for she suspected that he wouldn't think twice about running away at the earliest opportunity, and with her purse, which he must have tucked away somewhere inside his clothes. Hill folk and their idiot games. I have a mind to take both of you in just for annoying me. The officer's red beard quivered as he frowned. Unless you've got a good reason why I shouldn't. He looked at Petra meaningfully. To her surprise, the boy did the same. They both seemed to expect her to do something. Well, yes, I'm really sorry. Both of us. She stammered. Petra. Astrophil's hushed voice filled in her ear was tired, as if he couldn't believe he had to explain. He wants a bribe. Oh, of course. The officer and the boy relaxed as she pulled out of her pocket with her left hand and pulled out two small coins. She dropped them into the man's outstretched hand. That's it? His face fell. Well, my people, they're just poor brassica farmers. She gave the boy a look that she hoped said, I can catch you again. And slowly she let them go. She reached into her pockets and turned them inside out to show their emptiness. The boy did the same. Street urchins, the officer hummed and turned to lumber out of the alley. When he had left, Petra pounced on the boy and ducked both his hands inside his shirt. Hey, he shouted, you foul-handed harpy! She plucked her purse out from under his armpit. I was going to give it back. Give a lad a chance. He stumbled away from her, his stained and sweaty shirt askew. She glared at him and then glanced inside the pouch to make sure everything was in it. The boy drew himself up and smoothed down his shirt. Now, normally, I'd expect you to buy me breakfast, seeing as how you almost sent me to the gallows. But, he grinned, catching her outraged eyes, since you're a lady and I'm a gentleman, I suppose it ought to be my treat. As they wandered down the crammed streets, she asked the boy, Am I so obvious? What, that you're fresh from the hills, like the scratch said? Too right you're obvious. He had an odd way of speaking, and an accent she had never heard before. His voice had a swing in its step, like someone walking in the city on his day off. No, is it so obvious I'm not a boy? Well, he drawled, it's not like you're the only one to have that idea. When we first arrived in Prague, my sis thought it'd be easier to move around the city alone as a boy than as a girl. Her get-up worked for about 5 seconds. She's a real stunner, a drop-dead good looker. She takes after me. Don't worry, though. You do all right in a pair of chows, but I got a sharp eye. They reached the door of a pub called Shorn Lamb, and the boy led her through a maze of stuffy rooms. He brought her to a table in the corner and ordered 2 big bowls of stew from a woman with more blue tattoos on her arm than teeth in her mouth. After she left, the boy stuck out his hand and pumped Petra's when she took it. Name's Neil. I'm Petra, she said. She still had doubts about Neil, however, and so decided to warn Astrophil. She would try communicating with him silently. Yeah, right, she told herself. Like that worked the last 1,000 times you tried it, but she concentrated. She felt something tickle in the back of her mind. Had she imagined it? She followed the slight buzzing sensation and focused on it. It was like the almost silent hum of Astrophil's internal gears, a sound she had heard so often in her ear that she forgot about it. But the humming in her mind now was something she felt, as if Astrophil were inside her head. Certain she could not be heard, she nevertheless thought hard. Lie low. If he discovers and takes you, he could sell you for more krona than he can imagine. The hum skipped, but Astrophil controlled his surprise and sent this stern thought to Petra. There is no need to worry about me. Keep your eyes on him. I have been lying low, in case you did not notice. An astonished, elated feeling washed through her. Astro! Astro? What? You can hear me? I can hear you. I did it. I did it. Yes, yes, you did. But we can celebrate later. For the moment, I beg you to be sensible and pay attention to that street thief you have inexplicably decided to befriend. Neil was studying her. Excitement had illuminated her face. You're a moody one, he said, glowering one moment and glowing the next. He paused. You're quick for a kitchen. A what? A kitchen, Morte. A girl. A kitchen is a girl. Oh, so is that a word from your language? Your voice sounds different. Of course, no one here talks like folks in Okno, but you are different, she finished lamely. Kitchen Morte is Kant. I got my own language. What is Kant? Kant's what the company of rogues speak. The company is like a guild, a group of no good doers who work together. You mean thieves? Thieves, sure, and jugglers, tinkers, actors, hucksters, ruffians, coney catchers, card sharpers, play beggars, hay passers, pot whippers, fortune tellers, and the like, and their kids. Are you part of the company of rogues? Nah, I got my own people. You're a gypsy? The word gypsy, well, it's not exactly in a crate. Petra paused. Do you mean inaccurate? He swallowed a mouthful of stew and then pointed at her with his spoon. It ain't right, see, gypsy means Egyptian. I don't come from Egypt. We call ourselves Roma, and we speak Romany. It's a funny thing, he trailed off, looking at her. It's strange you caught me lifting your purse. Roma are flash thieves, and I have never been caught. He was silent for a moment. Then he lifted his right hand and pinched his forefinger and thumb together. Petra yelped and dropped her spoon. She rubbed her left arm, which had been resting on the table several feet from Neil. Interesting. He lifted his hand again. Petra resisted the urge to slap it away. It is not so interesting if you're the one getting pinched. Very interesting, he pronounced, lowering his hand. You weren't supposed to feel that. What did you do? How did you do it? Neil lifted up his hands again. Petra's spoon lifted into the air and plopped into her stew. Eat up. She stared at him. Can you move things with your mind? Nah, it's more like, he flexed his hand, like I've got extensions. Like my fingers are real, real long, but you can only see a little bit. Doesn't that get in the way? When you eat with a spoon, are you grabbing it with the tips of your real fingers? Are the invisible parts hanging around and jabbing into your face? He laughed. That'd be awkward. No, the ghosts come and go. If I feel myself wanting something, like a fine ribbon for my sis, or to play a joke on someone, my fingers just kind of grow longer. The ghosts go away when I don't need them. It's very useful. He took in her expression of rapt attention. Then he leaned forward across the table. Did you ever hear that people who lose a leg sometimes feel the part that's missing? He asked. That they can twitch their ghostly toes and feel an ankle that ain't there? No, is that true? Of course it is. Why, I met a rogue who got his leg crushed by a horse. The mangled bits were chopped off below the knee, but he swore he could still feel joints of pain in his ghost limb and had dreams of walking. How do you know he could really feel the leg that wasn't there? I've never heard of such a thing. Just because you don't know something doesn't mean it's not true. I didn't say I didn't believe you. Petra was uneasy at the thought that someone might still feel a missing part of the body. Could her father feel his phantom eyes? Did they cause him pain? He had never mentioned it. I don't care if you do or don't believe me. Just pretend to believe me for a spell. Of course, if you don't want to hear my story, a Roma story that normally someone who isn't Roma wouldn't hear, tell me. Neil smiled. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, our people lived in the desert. They trained horses and elephants. Now, both are beasts you can train and ride, but they sure don't think alike. If a horse loves you, he loves you across hot coals and battlegrounds and buggy swamps. But if an elephant needs to know why you want something, but an elephant needs to know why you want something, he has to agree with what you're doing. That he has to agree that what you're doing makes at least some sense. The Roma used to be split into 3 tribes, not 4 like we've got now. The Ursari is the tribe best at treating animals. Fact is, they still sell animals to the Gaji. What's the Gaji? Outsiders, like you. Now, there was one Usari tribesman named Danior who was better at handling horses and elephants than the rest. He also had a clearer way of seeing things than most of the Ursari. It gets hard to like someone who's always better than you, and the Ursari leader especially didn't like Denyor. Soon he began to downright hate him. So one morning Denyor woke up alone in the desert. His tribe had left him high and dry. He had his tent, but no water and nothing to hunt with. And that's sure death in the desert. He prodded along in the burning sand looking for water. You can't last long like that. Soon he lay down and waited to die. Then it struck him that he could hear something. It was the sound of many hooves. He thought maybe his tribe had come back for him. So he hefted himself up. But it wasn't the Ursari. It was a group of Gaji, and pretty important looking ones at that. 7 mean-eyed warriors on horses in the lead. Behind them walked an elephant, carrying a man who was the most important of all. Now Danyor recognized most of the horses and the elephant too because he had trained them. And who is the Gaji on the elephant? It was none other than the Desert King, who had a gold-glittered wife and 11 pretty children. Danyor raised his hands, asking the warriors for help. They stared straight ahead like he didn't exist. Then Danyor begged the horses to help him. The horses, though, loved their masters like Danyor trained him to, so the horses listened to their masters and ignored him. Then came the elephant. The Desert King tilted back and forth on top, in a little house that was strapped onto the elephant's back. Danyor saw that one strap was loose and dangling down, and he reached for it. The Desert King looked down, drew out a sword, and slashed it, cutting off every single finger on Danyor's hand. Petra gasped. What happened then? The elephant knew Danyor for who he was, and she didn't agree with the Desert King's treatment of him, so she reared up. She shook off the house and the Wicked King with it. She reached out with her long nose and wrapped it around Danyor. She ran off fast, faster than the horses and faster even than you, pet. She took him to an oasis where she lowered him into the water. She scooped up mud and patted it over Danyor's hands to stop the bleeding. The funny thing was, after his hands healed, he discovered that the ghosts of his fingers were far better than his real ones. The ghosts were longer and dead quick. They could flash out and grab a desert hare by the ears. Danyor hunted, and he learned to use his new fingers. But Danyor had a score to settle with the Wicked King. When he rode out of the oasis on his elephant, he headed straight for the capital city, where the night palace stood, tall like a hard flower. That night he snuck toward the palace. His invisible nails clicked open locked doors. Soon he was in the nursery, looking at a row of princes and princesses snug in their bed. Now Danyor was a fair man. He led away only 10 of the Wicked King's children, one for every missing finger, and left behind one son. The prince grew up to hate the Roma for stealing his family, but he also hated them for not wanting him to. When Danyor reached the city gates, he loaded his new children into a big wagon, promising them kindness and freedom. He hitched the wagon to the elephant, and the great gray beast galloped over the sand. That's how Danyor began a new tribe of Roma called the Calderdash. They're a secretive lot, also too snobby for my taste. But that's what comes from thinking your great-great-great-great-granda, whatever, granda, was Danyor of the Usari, and that your relations were princes and princesses. What did Danyor do to the Usari? Do? Well, they left him to die. He avenged himself against the Wicked King. Didn't he avenge himself against his tribe? Neil looked at her as if she had suggested the sky was orange. You can't avenge yourself against your own people. Petra saw what he meant. It's hard to say who had been crueler to Danyor, the wicked king or the usury. But family is family, even if they abandon you in the desert. Are you a member of the Calderash tribe? Petra asked. Nope, the Lovari. We're players. You know, we act and sing and juggle and fiddle and delight. But it sure doesn't pay well. You have magic skills, she looked at him with respect, and you're so young. I'm not. I'm older than you. Petra was skeptical. He was a few inches shorter than she was. How old are you? Well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? He shifted uncomfortably and began eating again. Truth is, it's not uncommon to have the long fingers that I've got. Petra considered pressing him to explain why he didn't know how old he was, but then it occurred to her that she also has things that she didn't want to share. Instead, she said, really? Lots of gypsies can do what you do? Roma, are they all long fingered? Nah, not all, but plenty. The gift of Danier's fingers runs strong with the Kalderash, but it pops up everywhere in the Roma because of marrying across the tribes. It's very useful for us Lovari, since I can pick a pocket or two with my cousins put on a puppet show, though other people aren't supposed to feel it when you use them, which makes you, his yellowy eyes narrowed, right odd. They were both quiet for a moment. Neil ducked his head down and continued eating his stew in silence. Perhaps, Astrophil offered, he is wondering what he has gotten himself into. Might you not do the same? Neil settled back in his wooden chair and patted his stomach. There was still a small portion of stew left in his bowl. That was good. Well, I better find the privy. I'll finish eating when I get back, he winked. Petra looked at the bowl and suddenly remembered, as Neil was getting up, the empty pockets he had shown the officer. He started to turn away. Her hand flashed out and seized one of Neil's wrists. You can just go in your trousers, she said angrily. She was sure he was about to leave her behind. He would slip out the back, and she would never see him again. She would have to pay the bill and walk out of the Shorn Lamb alone, and wander this crowded, stinking city alone. Astonished, Neil sat back down in the chair and shook off her grip. He hissed, What's the matter with you, always resorting to a ruckus? You're attracting attention, jumping around like you're got fleas. And that, he wagged his finger at her, will always get you caught, always. Petra glared. She was in no mood for a lesson in thievery. Listen, I'm sorry, Neil said. I'll let you leave the pub first. It's harder to leave second, because then you have to leave an empty table and folks notice. It's true. It wasn't decent of me to leave you in second, yet because I'm more experienced. So you go on ahead and I'll follow after. He gestured toward the exit in a manner that might have been called courtly. Petra felt a little better knowing that he had not been planning to trick her, but she was still troubled. What about the people who work here? Don't they deserve pay? He sighed. Maybe those who can't look after what they got don't deserve to keep it. Neil's words made her think instantly of her father and his stolen eyes. By Neil's logic, her father's blindness was not a cruel torture, it was something he had brought upon himself. Petra had not cried once since the day her father had was brought home in a cart, and she refused to do so in front of this live and untrustworthy thief. She had to get out of the tavern. Right then she felt like a sheet of thin paper soaked with dirty water, and just one more drop could make her disintegrate into shreds. Petra reached for her purse and beckoned to the tattooed woman. I'll pay, just go. He stared. Then, to her surprise, he ducked under the table and seemed to be rummaging for something. Just as the woman reached them, he straightened up and held out a filthy coin. We'll go halves, he smiled at her expression. Always keep your money in your shoe, pet. It's high impossible to nick it that way. After they had paid, Petra walked quickly through the airless rooms, eager for the open warmth of the sun. Neil was close at her heels. When the heavy pub door slammed shut behind them, he continued to trail after her. She wasn't sure which way to go, but she didn't care. What's got you so riled? He shouted at her as they pushed past a swell of people. It was noon, and the streets of the city were bursting with noise and bustling bodies. I paid, didn't I? When Petra did not respond, Neil's voice rose in frustration. Fine, I get it. You got some high-minded ideas about what's right. That's because you can afford them. Me, I got a family of fiddlers and puppeteers, and only my sis can get real work because her skin is light enough. So I'll take what I can get, and if that's stew, that's fine by me. I'm glad that you told the scratch what you did and saved me from a hanging, but I got no need to keep company with some hoity-toity type. Petra stopped abruptly. Then why are you following me? Neil spread his hand. I just happen to be going the same way as you. Aren't I allowed to go meet my sis? Because she'll tear my hide if I don't. Petra did not want to reveal that she did not know where she was going, so instead she asked, Well, where are you meeting your sister? Why, at the castle. That's where she works. Petra paused. Your sister works at the castle? That's what I said, ain't it? They had stopped in the middle of the street. People milled around them, jostling their sides. Keep moving, shrilled a woman with rash red cheeks. Neil tugged Petra to the side of the street, where they stood against a wall that smelled of wood rot. Petra asked the boy, Is Neil your real name? Well, no. He shoved his hands in his pockets and looked away. It was as Petra had thought. He couldn't even be trusted to be honest about the most trivial thing. He continued, It's in Indra Neil. It means blue, but I'm not blue. And Indra Neil isn't easy to wrap your mouth around, so it's plain Neil for me. Petra then said, Would you introduce me to your sister?